Hey friends, welcome to episode 6 of A Level Deeper. I'm Chad Miles, and I'm going to try my best to be your podcast host today. Failure. The thing you, maybe like me, at times try to avoid at all costs. It's like we have a vision for life and maybe take some actions toward it, but do absolutely everything in our power to avoid failure until it happens.
Well, in my case, I gambled so hard up front and my gamble completely failed that now I'm 39 with very minimal money and I'm back in school. So, I mean, my gamble failed 100%. Didn't pay off.
Today on the show, I'm joined by Jared Freeman, probably the most energetic yet stoic 39-year-old you might ever meet in your life. Jared was someone who had a plan. He knew his path and what he had to sacrifice to get there. And then this old failure thing reared its ugly head. In our conversation, Jared and I take a look at failure and how we define it. We talk about why Jared was willing to do anything to achieve his vision for life, and how his outlook on life has changed since he experienced his biggest failure. So go ahead and sit back, relax, and enjoy a couple of dog dads chatting about life. Enjoy episode 6 of A Level Deeper, titled Overcoming Failure and Diversifying Purpose with Jared Freeman. We're talking about recording our conversation. You were saying how we were going to record at 8:30, right? Which I think it is now your time. And you were saying how, that'll be no problem because your alarm clock, which happens to be named Orla, who is your dog, is going to wake you up plenty early. We were just chatting before, but what time did she wake you up this morning?
4:45, I believe, with her little whimpers and whines, and then she stares at me, gets me out of bed, takes my spot, and then falls back asleep until I'm ready to open the garage door to take her to the park. So she's got it planned out. She knows exactly what's going on. She knows exactly how to get what she wants in the morning.
It wasn't exactly where I was picturing starting, but I just, as I'm hearing you say that, I've got my dog Sadie just curled up in a little ball next to me at the moment. Dogs, man, you and I both entered into the dog dad world about the same time.
Oh,
and
yeah.
What's your dog experience been like?
Oh, I don't want this to sound hyperbolic, but it literally is life-changing. And I mean, you always hear about parents when they have a kid, how it's life-changing. And I don't know if it's to the same degree because I'm not a parent. But it really is like, it definitely changes your life. I mean, their presence is one thing, like just the positive joy that they bring to you, but also the responsibility that you feel for their happiness, well-being, and all that. So yeah, it's definitely, I would not change it for the world. I wish I would have gotten a dog sooner, my own dog sooner, but just wouldn't have been able to care for it like I should have because of my past work. But I definitely can't see my life moving forward without a dog in it. They're amazing.
Yeah, our stories are similar in that it took us many years of our lives before we finally came around to this idea of getting a dog. And I couldn't agree more with you as far as it's kind of like it's hard to imagine going through life all these years and I'm like, oh my gosh, I was missing out on something so incredible. Yeah, and now I'm with you. Like I'm sold. I want one for the rest of my life.
Definitely.
So you mentioned your work and you didn't feel like you were able to have a dog before. Kind of illustrate for us a little bit more about that, what that work entailed, why that wasn't a possibility earlier in your life.
Yeah, so my work career started immediately after college. I had a professor, Mike Stack, who had a startup gym in Ann Arbor that I wanted to start with as soon as I got out. So as soon as I was done with my bachelor's degree, I emailed him, went and interviewed, and started working. Like I said, it was a startup in the fitness industry, which is a little bit unique in that there is not, the margins in fitness are really tight. So if you're running a startup in fitness, you are working nonstop. So it wasn't uncommon for me to work 80-hour weeks, some weeks, go home, pass out, wake up, go back to work. So it was literally work and sleep was kind of my life. And obviously the type of dog I wanted was like a sporting dog. I have a golden retriever. So I knew that type of dog was going to require a large degree of exercise and attention. So I definitely knew that it wasn't the time to do it. So yeah, it was just a crazy time in my life for work and not having that balance to where I feel like I could give the dog the life it needed.
So let's go back to this decision where you're coming out of college and there's this startup from one of your professors, Mike Stack. Why that opportunity? What made you reach out to him and say, this is something that I want to pursue?
I mean, I knew I wanted to go into fitness, and I knew that if I was going to be in fitness and have a career that could provide the type of life that I wanted, I was going to have to own a gym. And Mike's vision, Mike's passion, Mike's knowledge was one part of it. It was very appealing to me. We aligned quite well with kind of our perspective on fitness and wellness. And then I also knew that he wanted to take this startup that he had and make it bigger and have multiple locations and expand from within. So I knew that if I could get in at that ground floor, then not only would I be with somebody that I aligned with from a professional perspective, but I would also have an increased opportunity, because in the fitness world, it's really hard to start a gym if you don't have like internal support. I mean, you can't go to a bank and be like, hey, I want to open up a 15,000 square foot gym. Can I have a $1 million loan? They're going to be like, no way, dude. Like, for fitness. So you really have to have a company or another person that can kind of help you along in that process. And Mike definitely was the type of person that, like I said, I aligned with from a professional perspective, but also I knew that we were going to be able to create something great that would afford me the opportunity to expand and do my own thing.
Yeah. So you mentioned this idea of, in order to have the life that you envisioned or the life that you wanted, you felt like the route was that you were going to have to own a gym. Tell me more about this life that you envisioned or life that you wanted that led you to that conclusion.
Yeah. So I guess it's kind of fitness specific, because in fitness, if you're not in gym ownership or running your own entity, the margins are just so low that you just can't make a lot of money. I mean, most fitness professionals are making 30 to 40 grand a year. So it's not that I wanted this like luxurious life of the rich and famous. I just wanted like to make over 70 grand, which at the time I thought would be sufficient for me. I just wanted to make that much money so that I could have like a normal middle class blue collar life where I could provide for a family, have a house, have a yard, enjoy time with have some free time to enjoy with my friends and things like that. So it wasn't necessarily like the envisioning of a life where I was going to be a multimillionaire. It was just the envisioning of a life where I could do something that I absolutely loved and I felt had a lot of purpose, but also make enough of a income to provide for myself and the people around me. So yeah, it was just knowing going into fitness that it's a tough place to make a good living, that you had to make it like higher up the ladder in fitness to have that, like what I would call a upper middle class life. You know, like if you go into engineering, you can start at the bottom of the totem pole making 100 grand a year. So, I mean, that's all you have to do. Whereas in fitness, you gotta go a little bit higher up the ladder to have that, like that basic level.
So then what made you choose fitness in the first place? Because it seems like, based on what you're saying, you had an awareness that, okay, if I go this fitness route, I know I have to reach this certain level if I want to even have a sort of, as you said, kind of basic middle class lifestyle that affords you some of the things that were important to you. So knowing that that was the case going into fitness in the first place, I've got to imagine that makes a lot of people say, well, I don't want to have to go and fight this uphill battle for years and years of my life just to maybe one day be able to say that I earn, a middle class living after I've fought for many years to get there. So why, I'm almost like, that sounds almost crazy to go into a profession like that. So why did it seem like for you why were you so sold on it?
Yeah. And trust me, I had people when I was in college telling me that they had been in the fitness industry and had gotten out and changed to another career path because it was unsustainable. I remember one incident I think I was in college at that point. I went back for a graduation party for a high schooler, and some guy that was a friend of my dad's or something like that was like, oh, I was in fitness for 10 years and, it's impossible to make money. Just keep your options open, and I was like, yeah, okay, thanks. It's one of those things, if you don't experience it, you don't know yet. And you always, I have confidence in myself, so I believe that it could be different for me. And at the same time, like the primary driver was just, in high school, I was very, very, very thin. I wasn't super confident. I go to the gym. I start to gain strength, start to gain muscle. I get good at something. I start to acquire knowledge at something. I did a lot of reading of how to improve your physique, how to get healthier, how to get stronger. So I had this, it was one of those first things that I was like, this is something I really like, and I'm acquiring knowledge on my own, and I feel like I can talk to people about it. And it gives me a sense of like mattering or a sense of purpose. So I already had those initial feelings with it. And then also just like the transformation in my body, the transformation in my confidence, my mental health. I was like, I want to give this to other people. So it was one of those things where it's like, it's more than just how much money am I going to make at this? It's like, this thing has changed my life. I want to give this thing to other people. I want to share this thing with other people. And if that means that I'm going to have to work a little bit harder, that's fine, because I love it. Like, what would be better than just spending my whole day at a gym and helping people along this path? So, and that's one of the reasons why I clicked with Mike so well, because Mike had a very similar story. He was bullied in high school, didn't really have much of a social connection. He goes to the gym, finds this community in the gym, and he's like, oh, I need to give this to everybody. So I think it's a common story in people that go into fitness. It's just like, man, this type of community, what this gave me personally, I need to share this with other people, and I'll do it at any cost. Even if that cost means I'm going to work a little bit more, work a little bit harder to get to a level that I could get to if I just stayed in my family business, or if I just went to the traditional business route, or you name the degree that you can make a lot more money coming right out of school.
And that has been my experience as far as, now that you say that, I guess I've never really thought of it, but that is a commonality amongst all the people that I know in fitness. Of course, Nate was my first interview on the show. And just so people are aware, what is your relationship with Nate?
Nate's my cousin and best friend. And the godfather to Orla.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And so Nate's story was so similar as far as finding fitness in high school. And is that kind of the same time when you had found it as well?
Yeah, that's actually the same time Nate and I became friends. We're cousins. So we knew each other from family parties and all that type of stuff, but we went to the same school, same high school, and we were in different crowds. So I played soccer. I was pretty shy, and Nate was into skateboarding and pulling pranks. And we just had our own group of friends. We were a couple of years apart, so we had our own group of friends. And then I was going to the gym, feeling better, doing these things. Our moms are best friends, so my Aunt Penny's like, hey, why don't Jared pick up Nate? He wants to start going to the gym, and they can go to the gym together. And sure enough, we started going to the gym together. And then that kind of was the formative time of our friendship, where we really started to get close and become best friends. So yeah, it was a similar time period for both of us.
I wonder about this idea of identity, because it seems like, you had mentioned maybe there was some bullying before this, and you not feeling like you were good at something, and then you started to acquire some of this knowledge. You started to physically change your body. Mm-hmm. How much did this passion for fitness become sort of, how much did you associate it with your identity of who you were as a person?
I think that, our identities are so multifaceted, right? But there was definitely a gap. I don't know if gap's the right word, but there was something missing from my confidence. So I never got crazy bullied, but I was shoved behind glass doors that, they have those old door stoppers and you can't get out. So I was shoved between the wall and the door, and I was trying to push my way out, but I couldn't, and everyone was passing by going to class. So stuff like that would happen to me, or I had a friend that was an all-state wrestler. I say he was a friend. He might not have been a friend now that I reflect back on it, but so I always wanted to be on time for class. I was that type of student. And he would, after gym class, he would force me to stay with him in the locker room until he was done. And he didn't care if he was late for class, right? And if I tried to escape, he would put me in a wrestling move and then like hit me with his belt, which now looking back, I'm like, that's like assault. But so like there were just instances where I'm like, I'm physically unable to avoid the things in life that I don't want to experience, which is like a feeling of not being strong enough or a feeling of not being masculine enough, where in your teenage years, like you have very traditional views of like what a guy or what a man should be. Right. So it was, I really wanted to, I didn't want to get stronger or tougher because I wanted to impose a will on anybody. I just wanted to be able to do what I wanted to do and not be subject to being overpowered by another peer, by a peer. So yeah, I guess a gap in my identity or a weakness in my identity, I guess, was just that like I'm not physically capable of protecting myself against people that are trying to do X to me when I don't want to do X.
I started this podcast for a very specific reason. I crave meaningful conversations and wanted to create an outlet to have more of them in my life. By recording discussions I was already having with friends and new conversations with new people, I guess I just wanted to bring deeper, more thoughtful conversations to a larger audience because I think we all have an opportunity to grow from them. I got to tell you, it makes me uncomfortable to do so, but I'm asking for your help. I'm imagining a show funded by the people who want to support deeper conversations. So for the cost of 2 coffees per month, you can help keep this show going, and as a thank you, get access to some exclusive behind-the-scenes content that isn't available anywhere else. In the episode description is a link to our Patreon where you can pledge your support and automatically get access to all the bonuses. So after the show, I'd love if you'd head there and check it out, and thank you in advance for your support. Okay, back to the episode. Yeah, I'm not sure what your definition of, crazy bullying would be, but that seems like you were bullied.
Yeah, it was bullying. It was bullying by, I think that's things that's so confusing for kids and teens is like a lot of bullying happens from the people you consider your friends, right? And it's like 60% of my relationship with that individual was very positive, and like it gave me a sense of community, and I would go to the gym with that person. Like it wasn't like this person was just like the guy that showed up in the hallway, beat me up and then left, and I never had any other contact with him. It was like that person also provided me with something that was very positive and beneficial to me at the time. Same thing with the people that shoved me behind the glass doors. Those were my teammates on the soccer team when I was a freshman. Like those were the seniors that were just like, dude's the freshman, let's pick on him a little bit. So, but during the game, they were giving me high fives. They were like championing me as like a welcome addition to the team. So it's a confusing time where like, yes, I'm being bullied, but at the same time, these bullies are also providing me with some other really positive things. So it was tough.
That's a really interesting reflection because I think in any kind of relationship, whether it's a bullying relationship or it could be an intimate relationship, it could be in a work relationship, I've come up against that, I guess, before in my life, where it's just that idea of people can bring certain kind of negative aspects to your life, but yet they're also bringing maybe something positive or something that you need. And so it is this kind of push and pull. Ultimately, as you look back at some of those relationships or friendships that also included bullying, I don't know, what's your sentiment as far as, do you feel like they were helpful relationships in your life? Do you feel like you took something from them? They've benefited you in some way?
That's a great question. I mean, yes, I think that they obviously provided me, if I was in those situations and I was only getting bullied and I didn't have those connections, obviously that would have been, really bad. That tension of positive connection and negative connection would have been all negative, right? So, yeah, they gave me some good. They also, as I got older and reflected more, they definitely teach you what you don't want and that you can have the positive without the negative. So, I don't know many people that are high school bullies that continue to be bullies later into life. I think a lot of them kind of grow out of it, but I knew that moving forward, I wasn't going to have friendships that were negative and also positive. It was just going to be friendships that were positive, and that was something that you could find. I also, I also think that to some degree, it does provide you with a little bit of resilience, like those experiences. If I would never have had those experiences, I don't know if that's necessarily positive either, because I was able to survive it and I was able to have growth from it. I don't think that it's necessarily just negative, but I can definitely see where there's kids right now that the only experience they have in high school is a negative relationship with bullies, right? Like they have no community, they have no support, they have no positive friendships. It's just all negative, which, I mean, that's not good, right? So I was fortunate to the degree that I had enough positive relationships surrounding me that kind of offset that negative relationship.
I think about the idea of adversity. That's kind of what I'm hearing you say, is that you got to experience adversity, and I'm with you in that if that's all that you face growing up, that's probably going to be a pretty negative thing on some of your development and your relationships, your mindset, your mental health. But the importance of going through some form of adversity when we're younger, to me, seems like a really beneficial thing as I reflect back on my life and some of the different things that I've gone through and some of the different adversities that I faced in high school or having some of that failure. I mean, I guess you could look at it as, well, some of those experiences and those adversities set you off on this path that helped you find fitness, and it set you on this 10, 15 year career journey that all stemmed from this one thing, right?
Correct. Yeah, for sure. It was definitely the thing that pushed me into the gym. And then, I mean, it was just kind of the snowball, the domino, the butterfly effect, whatever you want to call it. It was definitely the first domino that fell to get me to where I am today.
So you painted this picture of, you wanted to get into fitness. You thought it was something that was a passion of yours. It also was something that you felt like could afford you a lifestyle that you were interested in. And again, you painted this picture of the lifestyle being, you were going to be happy if you middle class. Could you go to work, do something that you were passionate about, have time outside of that to focus on your friends, focus on your family? And yet here you are early in your fitness career journey. You described how you're working 80-hour weeks. You go to work, you eat, you sleep, and that's the entirety of your life. Something's not clicking there. That doesn't seem like the vision that you had. So how did you find yourself in that place, and what was that like?
Yeah, great question. It was definitely not, well, I guess it was kind of what I was expecting. So my kind of long-term vision that I had was the classic startup story that you hear, right? Like sleeping on a cardboard box that's unfolded on a concrete floor while you build this thing that at some point you can kind of step away from and be free from, right? So I don't know where I got everyone knows about the concept of delayed gratification. For whatever reason, at that point in my life, I was 100% bought into delayed gratification at like the most epic level ever. So I was like, hey, if I can do this for 5-10 years and build this entity that can be self-sustaining and I can sit kind of outside of, but still be involved in, because I do love the community and I always wanted to be involved in the gym that I created. But if I can build this thing and I can sacrifice right now to get it, when I'm 35 or 40, I'll have all the freedom in the world to do the next thing that I really want to do. And that was kind of the reason that I was willing to make the sacrifices that I did in my 20s and early 30s, because I thought that the payout was going to be so much greater than the sacrifice that I was going through at that point. And I mean, you know me, I have a lot of energy. I tend to be a very just innately happy person. It wasn't really hard for me to work that much and to maintain positivity and to feel energized still. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was tired. I had sacks under my eyes. I looked tired all the time, but I still felt great and I was motivated to do the work. And it was something that was very, very fulfilling to me. But yeah, to answer your question, I was focused on delayed gratification. I was going to do everything possible to get to this point in my late 30s where I could be outside of the organization, have a general manager running my gym. I could do what I wanted at the gym. I could run the programs that I wanted to run. I could train the clients I wanted to train. And then if I wanted to get trained in something else, to bring something else into the gym, I was going to be able to do that. So that was kind of the long-term vision that was sustaining me at that time.
Yeah. So is that what you wanted to, you mentioned you wanted the gym to become a self-sustaining thing so that you could go focus on whatever it is that you wanted to focus on. Was that still related to the gym? Did you have something in mind that was completely aside from the gym that you wanted to, once the gym could be this thing that could support your lifestyle, that you would go then do blank?
Yeah. At the time, like back in my early 20s, mid 20s, when I was doing this intense work, I wasn't sure what it was going to be. I knew that it was going to be, whether that be like family and friend type stuff, or maybe I was going to want to focus more on just training athletes, or I was going to want to just do personal training and have that as some extra income, but the gym was kind of sustaining everything else. Once I got later into my like late 20s, early 30s, I started to really enjoy the connection with people and the mental health aspect of fitness and the behavior change aspect of fitness, the coaching type stuff. I was most fulfilled sitting in an office with somebody and getting deep in conversation with them about what's holding them back, what obstacles are in place that they're having trouble navigating to get to the place that they want to be. So I knew that if I was able to create this self-sustaining entity, something would come into my vision that would allow me to focus on that thing. I wasn't always sure what it was, but I knew there was going to be something. And at the end of the day, worst case scenario, maybe I just liked doing what I was doing. I could do it a little bit less and I could have a family and spend more time outside of the gym or whatever. So, yeah, I guess the freedom to choose was at the end of the day kind of what I was working so hard to achieve down the road.
It's sort of this, I don't know, catch-22 thing, because the freedom of choice and the freedom to choose is something that I've always aligned to as well, and something that it's just felt important to me in my life. And so I guess in so many ways, a lot of my story early on in my professional career is similar, in that my thought was, well, I first started my career at General Motors. I was doing software development. I spent a year there. And then I left to go pursue real estate investment. And my brother and I wanted to start a real estate investment firm. The whole idea behind it was, I mean, I guess I thought I enjoyed real estate to some extent, but it was essentially, can we create something that makes us enough money that can be essentially self-sustaining, just as you're saying, so that then we can go invest our time and our effort and our energy into the things that are actually meaningful to us and the things that we actually want to do in our lives. And it's just sort of this funny thing, because my experience was, in putting all of my time, effort, energy into pursuing this thing that's going to make me the money to get me to eventually get to a point where I can go do something that's meaningful to me, I never had any time or energy to be able to invest into something meaningful to me. And so it was just like this never-ending hamster wheel of,
definitely,
you know, here's the meaningful thing in my life. It's this carrot dangling outside of the hamster wheel, and I'm just spinning and running and constantly trying to get there. And I'm like, I'm going to get there. And so it's just kind of funny to now look at it. And why do you think it is that we set up our lives that way? That, okay, if I just work super hard, I put my head down, if I make all this money, and then I can go do something that feels meaningful to me. I guess, what was it for you that made you decide on that path?
I mean, I think part of it is just exposure to that narrative being so ubiquitous in our like world, like in our Western culture and in the American TV shows that we watch, and the things that we hear about people that are successful, what they did and how they did it. So I think part of it's just that schema or template that we observe and then want to integrate into our lives. I think that's partially what it is. The other thing I think is, I mean, as innately as humans, we want security, right? We want to feel safe. And if we can invest a lot up front, for some people, if we can invest a lot up front to get that safety and not have to worry about that anymore, it just feels more freeing, I guess, than to just start with some of the stuff that you like, but also doing some of the work, and that being a constant for the rest of your life. Because if you don't feel like you've built up that, in my opinion, if you don't feel like you've built up that security and you never have it, then it's always like, yes, you're doing things that you enjoy and you're doing things that you like while you make some money, but that's forever if you don't have that security built up, right? So my whole thing was, okay, first box I got to check is I got to get the security. I got to make sure that I have this set. And then while I'm doing the things that I love down the road, I can do it with less worry that like something could go wrong and put me behind. Well, in my case, I gambled so hard up front, and my gamble completely failed, that now I'm 39 with, I mean, if you balance my cash with my debts, with very minimal money, and I'm back in school. So, I mean, my gamble failed 100%. Didn't pay off. I mean, failed from the outcome that I wanted. Like I still got a lot of things from it, right? Like the experience is priceless. The friendships are priceless. There's a lot of things that I got from it. It wasn't, I guess, a complete failure, but that's the kind of the risk I took.
When you're saying security, you're saying safety. How would you define those things, or what did that mean to you? That if I had blank, then I would feel secure.
Yeah, it was financial security. It was having a steady amount of money so that I could, if any health care things came up or any emergencies for myself or my family, like I want to be able to make sure that that's not a worry, right? Because I mean, we do live in a country that it is kind of like, if you don't do it yourself, you're effed. Like there's no universal healthcare here. Like you have to be able to have good enough insurance to get good enough care, or you could come down with something and it completely bankrupts you, or it completely, like you can't get the treatment to overcome it, right? So there's like this, I've always had this innate sense of like, this is like, if I don't do this, I may not survive in this type of environment. Like there's just a feeling of, I have to do it myself and make sure this is set, or things could go sideways fast.
So you associated financial security literally with survival.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. Well, and I guess I wouldn't have thought of it the same way, but I share a lot of those sentiments around feeling like money is what's going to make me feel secure. Money is what's going to make me feel safe. I don't know if I had previously used the term for survival. However, as I'm hearing you say this, I think that is a lot of what I feel, is like, it feels like this innate, being scared if I don't have money, that I'm just not going to be able to make it. I'm not going to be able to provide. I'm not going to be able to pay my bills. And then what's going to happen? And I'm not going to be able to survive. So I guess that I resonate a lot with that. You mentioned, let's come back to this idea of failure and that story, but let's go back a little bit to, at some point the opportunity came and you got to become a gym owner, right? Tell us that story. How did that opportunity come? And I guess maybe more specifically, on that day when you got to become Jared Freeman, the gym owner, what was going through your mind that day?
Yeah, so our original location in Ann Arbor was insanely successful.
And what was the name of the gym, so people know?
Yeah, Applied Fitness Solutions. So in Ann Arbor, when I got there, I want to say we were like 1,500 square feet with maybe 50 clients. Devin, my other best friend, was hired in right after me. We just blew up. I mean, we were enrolling people like crazy. We were in a little storage unit, so we just kept expanding. We just kept buying the next storage unit down, and then we would knock down walls and like open it up, and like it was just it's a little bit of a weird facility, but it's just like storage unit connected to storage unit connected to storage unit with a big wall blown out, and we just kept putting gym equipment in there. And I mean, we got up to, I want to say like 1,500 clients. We were making tens of thousands of dollars a month in profit. I mean, we were really crushing it crushing it in the fitness industry, right? And it was time to expand. Devin got the first one in Plymouth. I got the second one in Rochester Hills. It was like 2016, 17-ish. We decided to make our new facilities bigger. So they were between 15,000 and 20,000 square feet, quite a bit bigger than our 9,000 square foot Ann Arbor facility, because we wanted to make sure that they were big enough to grow as fast as Ann Arbor did. And for us, we obviously didn't know that the fitness boom was coming, which was going to make it a little bit tougher to fill those facilities. But when I opened the doors to Rochester, I mean, you've been there. It was a beautiful facility. Like, we put hundreds of thousands of dollars into renovating it. We had huge fitness rooms, pendant speakers dangling down, amazing sound systems, blue and black speckled rubber flooring. I mean, it was, when you walked in there, you're like, whoa, like a bamboo wood wall with our logo that lit up. It was beautiful. And I mean, I guess the day that it happened, the day that we did our grand opening or whatever, my family was there, everyone was there. It was just like, okay, dude, all that work that you put in, all those like tired days, all the missed things in your 20s that you didn't do that a lot of 20-year-olds did. Here's the payoff. You got it. You did it. And now it's time to obviously keep it going, but the hardest part is over. That was kind of the thought. And all the things that you want to do and all this type of stuff, the train is on the right track and you're going in the right direction. It was a sense of achievement, but like anything, I mean, it's the classic sayings, once you get there, it's a momentary thing. And then the next challenge starts, right? So I knew that we had to grow fast. We had a lot of debt to pay off. But I was extremely confident that we were going to be able to do it with the system that we had and the connections that we had in Rochester. So yeah, it was a feeling of, I don't want to say pride. I'm not a big fan of the pride. It was more gratitude to like all the people that were surrounded me, my parents, Mike, Devin, Nate, like just everybody that contributed to this thing. I was just so grateful that it had come to fruition and things were on the right path.
What makes you say you're not a big fan of pride?
I just feel, for me, pride is it's very like personal. And from my perspective, I feel like a lot of the success that I've had in life, I know this for a fact, actually, a lot of the success I've had in life has occurred because of people outside of me. I am very, very, very privileged in my life to have two parents that are amazing humans. My sisters are amazing. My best friends are amazing. Mike was an amazing mentor. I just had so much support that I guess I don't know. Pride just doesn't do it for me, because I didn't feel like it was just me. I was just kind of a conduit through all these things came into to allow this thing to happen. So yeah, I would say gratitude was a bigger word, a more accurate description of what I was feeling at the time.
But then what was your opinion on the role that you did play in all of this? Because I'm hearing you say all of that. You're sort of a conduit of the different people in your life, the different opportunities. And yet all of those different people and different opportunities weren't the ones that were setting your alarm for 3 a.m. in the morning and making you work 80 hours a week and, having this mindset and putting your head down and doing the work. So to me, it seems like there's still a role that Jared Freeman played in all of this, that you're still a variable despite all of those opportunities that you received. What's your perspective on the role that you do play in your own success?
It's a tough one to answer without going too deep into some philosophical realms on just like free will and things of that nature. But like,
well, this show is called A Level Deeper for a reason.
A Level Deeper.
So.
Yeah, I guess. So that work ethic is, I think, very much instilled in me, probably biologically based, if you wanted to get into like the genetic neuroscience aspect of it, but also just Like my dad owns his own company, concrete flat work. They've never brought in external help, which a lot of like concrete flat work companies will do. They'll bring in low cost labor and just like have them do the work, and then the owners will just live the life. He's always been in the trenches grinding. He's 60 something right now. He's probably pouring concrete tomorrow. So like that was somebody that I observed growing up and was extremely proud of and inspired by. So like, yes, I was setting my alarm clock and waking up in the morning, but I also had my father who busted his butt every single day of my childhood, and I observed that. I had my business partner, Mike, who was there at the gym with me first thing in the morning and when I left. So yeah, I mean, I did do those things, I guess, but at the same time, they were inspired and cultivated and facilitated by a lot of other forces outside of me. So,
well, I just think about this idea that, I don't know, in some ways I feel like you're maybe even downplaying some of your own role in your journey, just because I'm definitely with you. I can objectively see how we can have all these influences in the way we can see people, we can see our parents, we can see people around us. And yet we still have to make the personal decisions every single day to show up a certain way, to take certain actions. And so it just seems like, as I observe the world, someone could come from your exact same upbringing, have similar people around you, but I think it takes recognition that it's worth recognizing that you observed these people and you said, okay, they're doing certain things that I think are going to benefit me. And it seems like you were very astute in that way, and that you noticed them and you took certain things and you gleaned certain things from them, and that helped to build up who Jared was going to become and how Jared was going to go day to day. I just don't think everyone's going to, given the same set of circumstances, I don't think everyone's going to end up with the same results as far as what they gain from other people.
Yeah, I think that's true. I guess the thing I would go back to is like, why is that? And is that why within my conscious control, or is that subconscious filters that are not necessarily within my control? But it don't get me wrong, like it definitely feels like it is. I'm not saying it doesn't, like it does. Even to myself, I think it feels like it is. But when I sit back and reflect and I'm aware and I kind of diffuse from the like internal reality or the reality that I feel, I always reflect back on all of those other things that are happening through me, I guess. That's where I come to the gratitude over pride. Again, not that I think pride is bad necessarily, but I just don't think it's as accurate for me of a descriptor.
Well, it's kind of fun hearing some of your perspective on this, because from my perspective, and to make a connection here, so my wife, Eileen, right out of college, she started a fitness group at her university, Oakland University, and then she took that the barbells, and she took that fitness group and they went and they did a class at AFS in Jared's Rochester location. Yep. And anyway, long story short, that ended up turning into, Eileen just loved the community that was built there. She loved the energy. She loved you, Jared, as a leader, and Nate was also there. So she loved the people, and she ended up working there full time after she graduated. So that's how I got introduced into the AFS community as well. That's how I met Jared. And from my perspective, that's how I always saw you as a leader. You were a very selfless leader. You came up, kind of the term I think you used to call yourself, I think Eileen would say, you were like the friend boss. Yeah. But that selflessness always came through. I mean, I always saw that, again, mainly from a third party perspective, but you were always willing to do things for your team members, for your employees, and in many ways probably sacrifice a lot of your own time, mental health, well-being, at least that's what it seemed like to me, in order to show up for your teammates and do the best that you could. Just talk to us a little bit about this, sort of friend boss idea, or some of your approaches to leadership and how it worked within your gym.
I've always been very aware of the fact that while there needs to be some level of hierarchy, or I believe there needs to be some level of hierarchy in an organization, the distance we put between the various levels is always kind of grossly out of proportion to the actual value that people provide, right? Like if you have a janitor, if you don't have a janitor, somebody has to do that work. So they're freeing up the time for whoever is above them, quote unquote, above them, to do that work, right? So they are extremely, extremely valuable because without them, somebody has to do it. So, or you have to pay money to do it. So I just feel like I've always felt like there's nobody that should be treated lesser or seen as less valuable. Obviously, if you get into like the pay dynamics, there's some level of ease in replacing somebody that's going to affect that to some degree. But even there, it's like people should have enough money to live, and people should be able to feel respected by the value that they're bringing to an organization. So it's just that, for me, that perspective of like, if they're in my company and they're doing work with me, they're extremely valuable and they need to be treated like that. And that doesn't only come through in how you pay them or treat them, but how you engage with them on every single level. So yeah, I tried to make sure people sensed that and they knew that I cared. They knew that I saw them as more than my fitness instructor or my front desk person or my janitor, whatever it is. They're at the end of the day, the most important thing is that they're a human and I'm a human, and we're going to connect on a human level. And then the work related stuff is secondary.
So if I'm a listener to this conversation, I'm probably thinking, so I've got Jared, who is a really hard worker. He's a selfless leader. He has partnered with the right people. He entered this fitness startup, Applied Fitness Solutions. He's partnered with Mike. They're crushing it in Ann Arbor. They're opening these new locations. In my mind, I'm probably thinking, I mean, this is the story or the foundation of a story of immense growth and all of the things that you've wanted coming true. And yet, a few minutes ago, you mentioned the word failure. Connect those dots for us as far as what happened from this point to when you say failure. What happened?
There's a quote by a poet that I love, David White. He's Irish. Not only is he a great poet, but he's also got one of the best voices ever. It's just like the most. Have you ever heard him?
No.
Oh God, when we're done with this, you got to look up David White. The quote. I don't have the quote in front of me, and I don't know it verbatim, but it's something to the extent of, your life is not the result of your will, but it's the convergence of your will and what the universe allows, which I 100% think is 100% fact. I mean, I don't like to deal with absolutes a lot, but I don't know how that's debatable. If there's a will, there's a way is completely false in my opinion. So what happened for us is, yes, we had all these components. It was going well. It was growing great. But then COVID happened, and the timing of our gym opening and our debt and the convergence of all those factors resulted in Rochester and Plymouth needing to be shut down to essentially save Ann Arbor, the base location. So when COVID came around, we had about 600 clients. We were still operating at a little bit of a loss, kind of an expected loss. We were okay with it. Like, I mean, in business, you're going to burn a lot of money before you make money, right? I mean, I think like Twitter's still losing money right now, but whatever. So we're losing this money. We know it's happening. And then COVID comes and we're off for I don't even remember how many months it was, but we were completely shut down. We raised a bunch of money because our community was unbelievable. We raised a bunch of money to pay some of that. We were able to continue paying some of our rent, but then the dagger was when gyms were allowed to open back up, the fear of COVID was still really high. So instead of 600 people running back to the gym, ready to support us and signing up 50 people per month, we had 100 people come back to the gym. We're open. The banks know this. Our landlord knows this. We have to start paying. And at that point, we were losing tens of thousands of dollars a month. And it was going to based on projections, it was going to eliminate Rochester and Plymouth regardless, and maybe pull Ann Arbor down with it. So we had to make the extremely difficult decision that close the doors. That's it. Yeah, it's brutal. It was brutal. Not just because my dream evaporated in front of my eyes due to this virus that showed up, but every employee that I had built deep relationships with, I had to help them find new work or encourage them to find new work. The community that we built that had raised hundreds of thousands of dollars to try to keep us alive, we had to lose them. Yeah, it was beyond just the fitness thing ending. It was also, I don't want to say the ending of a bunch of relationships, but in reality, the ending of a bunch of relationships, or at least the significant changing of them. I mean, there's still some clients that I text with and will connect with on a regular basis. Employees, like I'm still in touch with Eileen, obviously, Andy, some of my employees that I was really close with. I'm still in touch with them, but yeah, it's the loss of a lot. It's the loss of what feels like the loss of a lot of sweat equity and money, but also the loss of a community, the loss of relationships, and then the loss of future time that is going to have to be spent repurposing yourself to regain that security, because I lost it all. I mean, I'm lucky in the sense that I have a family that's relatively wealthy, not by maybe American standards. Well, yeah, we're middle class, but from a large perspective, they do really well. I have Nate and Renee who were able to repurpose fast, or Renee was outside of the business, so she was just continued working. Nate was able to repurpose fast, and I was able to lean on my immediate supports for a lot, and I still have to. But yeah, it was a brutal time period for sure.
What's your internal dialogue like during that time? Because I think about how you shared in high school, you started getting into weightlifting and getting into fitness, and you mentioned how it was a way to build up your body to physically keep the things that you didn't want out. And despite all of that, you weren't able to keep everything out. And this experience happens to you. What's going on inside of your mind as all of this is happening?
I think my physical fitness and health, I see a very big overlap and interdependence between your physical health and your mental health. So I do think that did help me to a large degree. It gave me something to focus on, continue to focus on. It definitely is a time where I can kind of go into a meditative place and really have a singular focus. So I do think that helped. But I think the other thing that helped me internally is I've always really been into Stoic philosophy. I had been getting into some acceptance and commitment therapy, mindfulness-based cognitive behavioral therapies, like over the preceding 2 years, which did really, really help. And don't get me wrong, like I had a lot of times where I was like, man, I am 37 at the time. I am 37. I have $0. I just lost my girlfriend at the same time. I have a dog, and I'm going to be living in my parents' basement here soon. So like, don't get me wrong. Like there were a lot of times where I was like, holy shit, what an absolute failure, and like, again, I always went back to that quote, the David White quote that was like, it's not just you, right? It's not just, this isn't like a failure of your essence as a human, or necessarily a complete symbol of your self-worth, but that doesn't mean that those thoughts don't arise frequently when you're in that situation. Were times where I was just like, what the hell did I get myself into? What am I going to do now? This is going to be a long road back to feeling like I have security again, which the ironic thing is I I don't not have security because, like I said, I have an amazing support network. So, I mean, at the end of the day, me hitting rock bottom from a personal financial perspective, career perspective, is still way better than a lot of people's not rock bottom, right? So, I mean, I was in that sense, but there's still this feeling of wanting to contribute and not being dependent on other people, completely dependent on other people, that does really tests your psyche. So yeah, that's kind of, I don't know if I even answered your question, but that's kind of where I went.
What is your definition of failure?
There's a lot of definitions of failure for me. I guess from my perspective, it was not complete failure, obviously, because I still had very strong relationships. I was still a good friend. I was still a good son. I was still a good dog dad. There were a lot of things that I was still doing really well. So a complete and utter failure is not the right view of it. It was a failure in my professional life, essentially, is what I was feeling, which at the end of the day is a big part of our life, right? I mean, it is a big part of our life. It's where a lot of us extract some component of our purpose, some component of our mattering. So I do think that it was a big chunk of me that was feeling like a failure in that arena, in that regard. But it wasn't like all consuming and debilitating for me by any stretch, because I did still cling on really tightly to those other areas of my life where I did feel like I was still doing really well.
I really resonate with this idea of when that financial security is quite literally ripped away from you.
Mm-hmm.
That it left you in a place where it sounds like you found some security or stability in other things. It made you think about, well, I've got relationships around me. I've got people
Mm-hmm.
around me who can provide me some of that. I resonate with that a lot because, like you, I place a lot of my security, a lot of my stability in money, in finances. And I'm in a
Mm-hmm.
period of my life right now where I don't have, I can't say that I have security in money. I don't
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of money right now. And that's been an interesting experience for me because I've associated so much with that, so much pride and responsibility, and I've got to be this responsible person. And money was something that, I don't know, I just thought built me up to other people, and that was something I could always just kind of rest my laurels on. And now I don't really have it. And so I appreciate that because my experience has been similar in that I've had to find some security and some stability in things that aren't dollars.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's been a healthy experience for me.
I agree. I do think it's very healthy. I think whenever you can have a diverse support network for your feeling of existence or success, whatever you want to call it, like the diversity is super important, because it's inevitable in life that at some point one of them is probably going to get ripped out from under you. And if you're not diversified in that support, you're going to collapse. Like, it's just, you have to have multiple aspects of support. Or like, if my sole focus and purpose and everything rode on my financial success and my career success, I know this because I've seen it happen to other people. I would probably have become suicidal and maybe like ended my life, which you see a lot of times in people that are just solely focused on one thing, whether it's a marriage or a relationship or their work or whatever it is. Like, if that's gone, they're gone. And I've been extremely lucky I'm extremely lucky to grow up. I didn't necessarily choose to have those things. Like, I came into a world where those things were there for me. Like, I came into a world with two parents that like were supportive regardless and had unconditional love and unconditional positive regard for me. And were always supportive. I had sisters like that. I have friends like that I've been able to lean on. So I'm very lucky to have that. But I think if you don't have that, and you're like, man, my whole life is predicated on this one thing, my encouragement for you is to do some work on trying to diversify as much as you can where you extract your purpose mattering and in coherence with life.
You go through this experience that you've associated with the word failure, which I guess I just want to share briefly that as a friend and observer, I didn't view it that way at all. Meaning, from my perspective, I saw someone who, as you're telling these stories and seeing the hard work that you had put in, seeing how selflessly you cared for your employees and your team members, seeing this community that you built that came back in droves and supported you all through this pandemic experience. And I've never witnessed a community of people act in the ways that this community did to all come together and to support you. And the way that through all of it in closing down the gym and helping your employees transition and find new opportunities. I mean, from my perspective, failure is one of the last words that comes to mind as I think about viewing you all go through that experience and the way that you communicated and you were transparent and you were honest with people. I have so much respect, and I still carry the utmost respect for you, for Nate, for Mike, for all of your leadership and your team members, for my wife, Eileen, and how you all went through that process and handled it with so much grace from what it appeared, knowing how difficult that must have been. I guess that just felt important to share first. And
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So you go through this experience and your time as a gym owner is ripped away from you.
Mm-hmm.
How did you decide what came next?
So going back to my original plan, when I was starting to, when we opened Rochester and I started to like really decide on that next thing for me once this entity got up and running and it was killing it and successful and I could put a general manager in place and everybody was paid well. And like, once we got to that level of financial stability, what started to arise for me was I wanted to start to focus a little bit more on mental health. And I thought that the combination of wellness and physical health, nutrition, mindfulness, all the things that we were doing at AFS, if we could pull in a like clinical mental health perspective as well, I felt like that was like the next thing that I wanted to do. So my whole plan once I got it going to AFS Rochester was get this thing up and running. It's going to crush it. I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to get my master's in clinical mental health. And then I'm going to integrate that into AFS in some way. So that was kind of my desire. That's why I started to get big into the Stoic philosophy type stuff, the Socratic questioning, the motivational interviewing, the acceptance and commitment therapy. Like that's why I started to integrate some of that stuff into my coaching and just start reading about it. So that was my plan. And then when the pandemic hit, everything went sideways. We closed down. It didn't take long for me. I took like a month where I just kind of chilled at my parents' house. Nate was getting ready to move to Arizona. We got mold in our apartment, which I think that was covered in Nate's podcast. So we had to sell that. Before I moved out here to Arizona. I lived with my parents for a little bit. And then I was like, clinical mental health is the way to go. I'm going to get my master's. I started to apply for schools, got in and hit the ground running, started my degree. So at the end of the day, I was like, there were some parts of me that were like, man, maybe you're moving a little bit too fast, take a little bit more time, do something else. But it had been a couple of years where I thought this was going to be the next step anyways. And I knew that if I did it and I did it for a few years and it wasn't the thing that I wanted, it's a degree and skills that are great to have regardless. Like even if you're not going to be a clinical mental health counselor or a therapist, the things that you learn from an interpersonal communication perspective and just a communication perspective, I think that it's beneficial regardless. So I was more than happy to get the degree no matter what the long-term plan was. So that's where I'm at now. I'm in a year into the program. I have a year left. And so far I'm loving it.
Yeah. What have you enjoyed about it most, whether it's from the schooling perspective or some of your work perspective? You had this idea that you wanted to get into this field, and now you're in it.
Yeah.
What's the experience been like?
Challenging for sure. One of the promises I made to myself once AFS closed was I wasn't going to go back to those 80-hour weeks. And I've quickly returned to like 60 to 70-hour weeks because I'm working full time and I'm in school. So it's kind of hard. It's two different things, but that's been a challenge. It's been fun and challenging to come in at the low end of the totem pole in a very complicated and complex discipline and field. When I was in fitness, I had been in fitness for close to 20 years. I was well read. I feel like I had my master's to PhD in fitness just from all the knowledge I had accumulated, even though I only had my bachelor's. But I had been around Mike, who's brilliant. Sawyer was brilliant in Ann Arbor. Like, just the knowledge I had accumulated, I felt like I could talk to anybody about fitness and feel like I was at their level. Like, there was very few things or very few people that I was like, they kind of intimidate me from a fitness knowledge perspective. So I felt like I was there. So to kind of push that all aside and then dive into this new profession where I know minimal relative to the best and the brightest in the field, it was a scary situation. And it still is, to be honest with you. Like, imposter syndrome is definitely something that's real right now with me. I feel like there's just so much that I don't know and so much that I have to learn still, but that's exciting for me. I like learning. I like understanding the concepts. So school's been enjoyable because it's given me some structure to do that. And now that I'm getting into my practicum where I'm actually sitting down with clients and doing therapy, it's been every session is a learning experience and is challenging and it's exciting.
I give you so much credit for being willing to go back down to the bottom of the totem pole, so to speak, right? I think that's the most difficult thing is people might look at you or know their own stories, and it's like if you're in your mid to upper 30s and to professionally have invested 20 years of your life going down a certain path and be willing to say, you know what, I'm just going to do a hard turn and go all the way back down to the bottom. And you talked about how acquiring some of the knowledge in high school helped build up. You took pride in that. And well, pride wasn't the right word, but you liked knowing. Knowing felt good, and that helped build up some of your confidence. And to now be willing to leave all of that behind and go back to not knowing. Do you have insight into what made you okay with that? Because from my experience, many people wouldn't be.
Yeah, I think that the kind of catalyst or perspective I had was I got into fitness because I wanted to help people as a fellow traveler in this crazy thing that we call life, this crazy experience. I wanted to help people actualize into their best self in some way. And my original medium for that was fitness. It's what I knew. It's what I loved. It's what had helped me the most. So as I continued to grow, fitness, I don't want to say it maxed out its effect on me, but it was like something that I think I achieved as much as I was going to achieve from it personally. And it was a maintenance thing, right? Like I loved fitness still. I still do. I'm still very active. I still work out. I still do all that stuff. But I was like, okay, so I want to add a new tool to the toolbox, not only for myself, but also to help others. And one of the biggest things I saw as a fitness coach and a wellness coach was like, there were a lot of clients where I did not have the tools to help them. Like, it was beyond my scope. It wasn't just their mental health and their getting better wasn't just something that wasn't going to be helped by fitness. I needed new tools. So I think the thing that made me willing to do it most off was I know that my purpose is going to be the same. I just have to pin it for a little bit so that I can go back and acquire these new tools. And then I can return to this profession, this helping profession. I mean, you can separate them into fitness and mental health and yoga and meditation. They're helping professions. We're trying to help people actualize themselves and become the best versions of themselves that they can. So I was okay going back down that totem pole because I knew that I was going to walk back or climb back up the totem pole with a bigger set of skills to continue the process and continue the thing that I wanted to be doing all along.
I really appreciate this perspective of being on one sort of path that is you want to help people become their best selves, essentially,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I think it's cool how you can look at your career in fitness as that was one tool. That was one way to try to help people do that. And now you're acquiring another tool, another skill
Mm-hmm.
set. But the path that you've been on and the mission that you've been on in your life really has never changed. And I think that's maybe something we can all learn from and take away is that if we get clear on what our own mission is in life, then these pivots don't seem as extreme because it's like, well, no, we're trying different things, we're acquiring new perspectives, new skill sets, new tools so that we can continue on this mission. I feel like that was helpful for me to hear today as I do explore different things and try different things. It's the way that I've always sort of felt is that I'm just putting new tools in the belt and they're all helping me along this path and journey that I'm on.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's kind of that whole like zooming out, the ability of zooming out and saying, okay, what at the end of the day, what is the core? What is the core path that I'm on? And then there's a lot of ways to walk most paths, right? And there's a lot of different tools and perspectives and ideas and things that you can incorporate into that same thing and accomplish the same overarching goal just with different types of tools. So yeah, I think it's definitely helped. It definitely helped me have the courage to go back down and come back up.
I imagined that we were going to spend a lot of time talking about mental health and therapy, and so let's plan. I'd love to have another conversation in the future. I think there's still a lot that we can cover together. So let's do that. I also just wanted to share with people. I just think it's funny. In some ways, I was sharing with Eileen that I feel like sometimes I was unsure if these conversations ended up being kind of like too serious or it doesn't always showcase the sides of me that are very goofy and very funny. But I just wanted to also illustrate for people that as Jared and I are having this conversation, Jared is the most energetic and fun and 39-year-old that's like he's like the mind of a 17-year-old living in a 39-year-old's body. I mean, the guy just has so much energy. He's goofy, loves all kinds of snacks and treats, and we had a lot of fun as we
$5 General.
Yeah, we spent a month together in Arizona at the end of the year last year, just having all kinds of treats and playing games. And so anyway, I felt like that was a fun point to end on, just in that
for sure.
You are a very, very passionate, energetic 39-year-old that you feel like you keep all of us young, and we love that about you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Try my hardest.
If people wanted to find you or connect with you or just kind of keep track of you on this journey that you're on now, what would be a way someone might be able to do that?
It's funny you ask because I am no longer on social media. Well, that's a lie. My dog is on social media. RedDog_Red She's got her own page. People could email me if they wanted to. I'm open for that. They can text me, call me. I've had some people that friends have let know that I'm going into the mental health field and they've been thinking about it. So I've talked to multiple people on the phone. I enjoy phone calls, but yeah, phone or email is probably the best.
There you go. So if you'd like to get in touch with Jared, find his dog, and while he's still teaching her how to respond to people, you'll probably be able to get in touch with him.
Exactly.
Thanks for being here and for sharing your story, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Chad. I appreciate it.
Hey, I just want to say thanks for tuning in to the show today with Jared. If you enjoyed this episode, would you mind taking a moment to leave a rating on whatever podcast platform you're listening on? It's just a small gesture, but one of the best ways that you can help grow the show. If you had thoughts on today's episode and wanted to share them or get in touch, feel free to follow me on Instagram at ChadMMiles or head to my website, www.chadmmiles.com. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.